The first widescale vaccinations began in the UK last December, and now 214 countries and territories have administered more than 4 billion doses of a COVID-19 vaccine. However, only around 15% of the global population have been fully inoculated, with those who got the jab concentrated in the world's wealthiest countries due to complications in supply and logistics. With disparities and other such hurdles to vaccination, innovation through technology and policy have been crucial throughout the pandemic. We discussed the potential of oral vaccines and policymaking to overcome the challenges ahead, particularly with the fast-spreading Delta variant on the loose. And for this, joining us today, we have Nadav KIDRON, CEO of Oramed Pharmaceuticals, a biotech firm that has developed oral COVID-19 vaccines. And we also welcome Juhwan, Professor of Medicine at Seoul National University's College of Medicine. Very warm welcome to you both. Thank you for joining us. And well, let's start with you, Dr. KIDRON, joining us from Florida. Now, you're going to be the first in the world to test the oral COVID-19 vaccine in clinical trials after successfully producing antibodies in a preclinical study after a single dose. And well, let's start with the basics. Could you explain more about how COVID-19 oral vaccines would work and how they can protect the population from the lingering variants as well?
Sure. So thank you. It's nice to be here with you. The idea of the oral vaccine is that it's being delivered through the mouth, and that has a few advantages. Number one is you don't need a professional to administer it. So if we're thinking that this thing is going to stay here, the idea that people can just take it at the convenience of their home makes a big difference. The second thing is because when we take it orally, because of the oral route, we're more likely to see less of the side effect that currently stands at about 9.4% of the people who take the injections. Furthermore, if you think about the waste, you're talking about the billions of vaccines, the syringe, the plastics, and all of that. When you give it orally, you don't suffer from any of those. But the most important thing is what you refer to as far as the Delta or future variants that we're going to see. Oramed's or Oravax vaccine is made out of 3 proteins. Usually what we're seeing is only the S spike, and the S spikes is the easiest one to get it to change, and that's how we get the different variants. By making a vaccine that is made out of 3 proteins, is like putting 3 shields in place that should give us a better protection against the variants, and unfortunately this is something that is very much needed now.
And well, here in Korea, we're looking forward to more people having vaccines over the next month as younger people start registering to get them. And well, Professor Oh, South Korea, during this surge of the Delta variant, it's been increasing restrictions and we're now under level 4. But the infection cases, the numbers have continued to climb and they remain well over 1,500 daily cases. Do you think then K-quarantine has failed? I mean, what's behind this upward trend and what are the current limitations to the level 4 restrictions?
Yes. K-quarantine might be still successful, although the case incidence is increasing, considering and compared to world situation. The secret of Korea's success is much more likely non-pharmaceutical intervention, which embrace the isolation and quarantine basis mostly, and less relying on the mobility restriction, which was pervasive in the Western countries. However, nowadays, the level 4 means a high level of mobility restriction, which is closing to Western countries. But this mobility restriction is not the main secret of the K-quarantine's success story. So I don't think this mobility restriction oriented regulation can be successful enough to keep the successful story of the K-quarantine. So less relying on isolation quarantine more, that might be my suggestions.
And in fact, Dr. Oh, your research has found that mobility restrictions in the early stages of the pandemic greatly help reduce transmission, but the effect might get weaker if it's introduced in the later stages of the pandemic. But now with the Delta variant becoming very widespread, what tools then can governments use to make sure that the new outbreaks are relatively contained?
Yes, that's a very critical point. the early stage made us very good successful results by the mobility restriction in the many world, including South Korea. However, that effect is much more wane now, so that I analyzed the data again using the recent data, and the recent data analysis results showed almost no association between mobility restriction and containing the transmission. So it means we need to refocus the isolation and quarantine more likely than before, so that now as a vaccination is available, so vaccine coverage increasing, and then the more smart isolation and quarantine of the new cases, that can be the sole solution to the stop the unwanted transmission, I think.
And Dr. KIDRON, given the limited supplies and the logistical issues surrounding COVID-19 vaccines, there have been many researchers like yourself who are looking into various kinds of vaccines. And well, there have only been a few successful oral vaccines because the active ingredients, they tend not to survive the journey through the gastrointestinal tract. How did your vaccine then overcome these challenges and remain effective in terms of oral delivery?
We actually skipped a little bit of the process, because what we did is we took the Oramed's pods platform technology, which allows us to take peptides, injections, and deliver them orally, and we applied it to a vaccine which is made out of the 3 proteins. The way this technology works is that, and by the way, we're also undergoing now a phase 3 on an oral insulin under the FDA in the United States. So it's exactly the same technology that we're using for the oral insulin of Oramed, that we're adapting it to the vaccine. And the way it works is that we put it in a soft gel capsule with a special coating that is pH sensitive. And then with the help of the Nobel Prize winner, Professor Hershko, we developed a protease inhibitor that protects it from the degradation. And with an enhancer, we're able to get it intact into the liver and then the bloodstream.
And Dr. KIDRON, among the current hurdles to vaccination of vaccine hesitancy in much of the developed world, and in the developing world, supply and logistical issues, could the oral vaccines possibly be an answer for both?
Yeah, the answer is that yes, and we're starting now to test it for naive people who did not take the vaccine yet. But there's no question, and we'll be getting tremendous amount of inbounds from people who say, I got 2 vaccines, but I want to get the oral vaccine, not only because it's oral, also because of the 3 proteins. And the idea is that oral vaccine can potentially provide a better protection against the variants. So we're definitely going to try both the people who are not vaccinated and the people already vaccinated to use it as a booster.
And Dr. O, right now only around 15% of South Korea's population has been fully vaccinated, compared to the around 50% range seen in other advanced economies. And there has been a great concern about the sluggish pace of vaccinations here and whether we have enough supplies to get us through. But with the 20s to 40s age groups beginning registrations for vaccines this week, are you optimistic? What should our vaccination targets look like over the next few months?
Yes, in terms of target, I think there should be as high as possible. In the previous time, there's something like a herd immunity between 60% to 70%. However, over time, that herd immunity meaning might be not stringent enough and not precise enough, so that much more higher than previous target can be achievable and then need to be goal. And also considering the bottleneck, the supply chain might be the most critical bottleneck in South Korea, while vaccine hesitancy is the bottleneck in the United States and other countries. So that in Korea, probably the 20s to 40s vaccine nation might be not stand on the vaccine hesitancy. They might be very fast to get vaccinated until the supply, the ceiling. So that supply chain facilitating might be one of the critical point at this time, I think.
And now, Dr. KIDRON, there's a lot of talk surrounding booster shots that you just mentioned. How would your oral vaccine be used as a booster option? And also there's a lot of question about scalability. How available will your vaccine be for production around the world?
Okay, so let me start with the second part about production. So our vaccine is actually made out of yeast, which allows us scalability and with a reasonable pricing. So that's one huge advantage as far as the ability to provide it to the world, because we are in a global struggle against the COVID-19 virus. And the idea is that if people can take the vaccine at the convenience of their home, and without the fear of the needle, without the need of to go and to wait online, but more than that, for the countries themselves who vaccinate the people, the fact that they do not need to get a whole logistic, complicated thing to send something sometimes at the freezer temperature will make it a huge benefit that will allow more people to get vaccinated, which will allow us to overcome this in a shorter amount of time.
Well, Dr. O, well, it looks like governments everywhere, they've been itching and itching to reopen their economies and restart businesses, have kids go back to school. But the Delta variant and all these other emerging variants are really knocking them off their original plan. Then what kinds of factors should be considered before governments decide to loosen restrictions and really return to normal?
Every world wants to be a near normal or free movement. However, without some good condition, that can be only achievable within only a few weeks. After that, it might be the more disastrous situation. So to prevent that disastrous situation with a free movement, we need to keep the infected people and then undiagnosed infected people with the segregation spaces very well to prevent further transmission from that persons. So to do that, we had very good knowledge about isolation and quarantine, and through the tracing and then testing with the high capacity, so that theoretically the perfect isolation quarantine of the all infected people and the contacted people to the infected people, that will minimize the probability of the undiagnosed infected people in the public, among publics. So that means very low risk of being infected during the free movement. So free movement can be really relying on the isolation and the quarantine practice, so that strengthening of the IQ, isolation, quarantine performance, that might be the critical condition.
And Dr. O, you said that South Korea's initial success lay in the central leadership's fast and responsible approach, and that was catalyzed by the golden balance between science and democracy. Then what further challenges do you foresee for public health authorities in the weeks and months to come, and how should they prepare?
Yes, that is really critical secret of our success in the last years, especially from the February to April. Then I believe that peaceful and persuasive leadership based on science and then uncertainty can be well filled by the political leadership as well. However, our secret is not really kept very well over time. Nowadays, much more regulation is working than persuasive suggestion with the cooperative and participatory approaches. So that now vaccine is much more available than before, so that non-pharmaceutical intervention is not the only option, then pharmaceutical intervention can be available more. So we can utilize an NPI and PI together at the moment, so that can be based on science still, not truly a political leadership ahead. The science is really helpful, so that if we can science-based agencies such as Korean Disease Control Agency can be leading much more than supportive politician rather than opposite sequence, that can make a more persuasive leadership rather than regulation. Then people may follow or be cooperative to the government suggestion. So that might be the future secret to be successful.
And Dr. KIDRON, I'd love to know what your timeframe looks like, what your schedule looks like for the manufacturing and the distribution of your oral vaccine.
So the biggest question is getting emergency use approval. So we are trying not at the developing countries, but the emerging countries in order to get it ASAP. So we're now starting the clinical trials, and hopefully with an emergency use approval, we can get, I want to say a shortcut, but an accelerated process that will allow us to get it approved, and then we can start selling it to different countries around the world.
Well, it looks like in the months to come, there's a lot of flexibility and innovation needed in both medical technology as well as policy, and we are very lucky to have people like you leading us along the way. And well, this is where we have to end the interview today. That was Nadav KIDRON, CEO of Oramed Pharmaceutical, and Juhwan, Professor of Medicine at Seoul National University's College of Medicine. Thank you both so much for your insights today.
Thank you.
And to our viewers, as always, thank you very much for watching.